Been here, Discipleship Catalyst, Georgia Baptist Mission Board, and today I'm excited to have Ken Adams join us on our broadcast, and I'll introduce Ken in just a second. Let me take care of a few housekeeping things here as you guys are dropping onto the broadcast. First, we just want to make sure that you know that we appreciate what you're doing in the local church, in the trenches every single week, and that's why we do this. Right now, we're doing this broadcast every Thursday at 3 o'clock, and we want to hear from you. As a matter of fact, we want to get you some resources into your hands. So one way we're going to do that is giving away some free swag today. So for some lucky viewer, if you will, make sure that everyone drops your name, where you're watching from, in the comments, and we're going to be giving that away at the end of the broadcast. So make sure you do that. Go ahead and do that in the comments below. Also, we want to make sure that you realize that those cooperative program dollars that your church gives is the reason we're able to do this on a weekly basis and have quality leaders come in and share wisdom and drop blogs and have these discussions like Ken Adams, is because your church is given to CP. So thank you for what you are doing there. All right. Now, Ken Adams, man, glad to have you, buddy.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Scott. Thanks for having me, man.
And if our people that are watching here, many of them are going to know you because you've interacted over the years. But if they don't, Ken Adams is the lead pastor at Crossroads Church in Noonan, and he's also the founder and director of Impact Discipleship Ministries, a ministry that's been going for many years and has just fingers of ministry all over Georgia and really all over the South. Ken, as we get going here, let me throw a question to you. Based on a blog, and we appreciate the blog, and we're going to go ahead and drop that in the comments chat section so people can download that and even track with us if they'd like to as we work through this discussion. You started this ministry, Impact Discipleship Ministries at Crossroads. Tell us a little bit how that began, why it developed, and maybe even what's going on now with you guys.
Yeah. So honestly, Impact Ministries has been, we've been trying to help churches and pastors now for a couple of decades, for about 20 years or so. And so really and truly, it just came out as an overflow of what we're learning and what we're trying to do here at Crossroads Church. And so I am, first and foremost, I'm a local pastor, and I am in the trenches like everybody else. And I do the exact same things that everybody else does. I have, staff meetings, elder meetings, all the regular stuff, funerals, hospital calls, all that. So this really is a ministry from a local church pastor to other local churches and other church pastors. And so a lot of it started, Scott, when I came to Noonan 31 years ago to right out of Southwestern to plant a brand new church. And so it didn't take me very long to realize that we needed. There's a lot to this story. There's a whole lot I could unpack, but I know we don't have a ton of time here. So really and truly, it just all came out of just me trying to figure out how to plant this new church, how to lead this church to be the kind of church that Jesus started 2,000 years ago. And so I say all the time, Jesus started the church the way he wanted it. Now he wants it the way he started it. And so really and truly, it all comes out of a journey from my life and our church of trying to figure out how do we get the church back to becoming a movement of multiplying disciples. And so we hadn't figured it out yet, but we're swinging at it. We're swinging at it really hard. And I say all the time, I can tell you what not to do more than I can tell you what to do. And so anyway, that's kind of a wide range, but kind of comes out of my life, comes out of our ministry here, and everything that we share through Impact has come out of the laboratory of a local church.
Love it. And I say all the time, and I think you and I have even talked about this, two things that I think are really important that have come out of, that I've seen in the best disciple making strategies that are out there are, number one, is customized for that
Yes.
church. It's coming out of a need, and it's using their language and their culture of that particular church. And the second one is that it's biblical. We're following how Jesus made disciples, and we're trying to create a contemporary model of what that looks like so that it can work here. And I'm just telling you what you guys are doing there at Crossroads Church in Nooning is working. And you are helping other churches figure that out, which is, man, be honest with you, that's why you're on the broadcast today. We want to help churches move from just doing discipleship to becoming a disciple-making church, which is my second question that I want to pitch to you, because you in your blog, you note a difference from a church who's just doing discipleship to one that would say, we're a disciple-making church. Can you expound on that?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, so I personally, I think it's a huge difference. And I hate to say it, but I think that most of the churches, well, I'll just put it this way. Most of the churches that I've been a part of up until I got here to Crossroads is that they were churches that had discipleship as an add-on to everything else that was being done. So it really became more like a program than the process. And so we really have a different take on that today. And we look at it like, so the mission, Jesus made it really clear 2,000 years ago. So the mission is to make disciples that will turn around and make more disciples. And so disciple making shouldn't be just another, it should be the means and the end. And so, you know, for a long time, I had this idea, you know, when you use the word discipleship, you think of spiritual disciplines, you think of going deeper, you think of disciplines, spiritual disciplines. And quite honestly, for a long time in my own life, that's what I thought. I thought discipleship was just a course or something that I did just to try to go deeper. Little did I know that disciple making was for everybody, and disciple making is literally ministry training. So it's training up disciples to go out and do ministry. So it's not just getting deeper; it's getting deeper to go wider. And so really and truly for us, we think there's a big difference between a church that just has discipleship versus a church that is committed to the mission of making disciples. And what's important, Scott, is that then that changes how you see worship. That changes how you see community and fellowship. That changes how you see leadership. So when that becomes really the end product, then that also changes how you see the process. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's a long answer to that.
Man, that is great. I'm tracking right with you. And it really leads into another thought, a question that I'd like to pose to you, because, you know, in your blog, you wrote about Jesus didn't build his disciples on creating programs for his disciples. He built it with a process, that he had an intentional process with his disciples. Can you break that down? Now, you mentioned a couple of those layers in your last comment. Can you maybe go a deeper dive here and talk about what Jesus' process was that has helped you guys there in Noonan?
Yeah. So just kind of back up a minute. So I guess one of the biggest realizations for me was when I kind of came to that point. It was, you'd think it would be a given, but when I kind of came to that point where I realized that actually Jesus's life and Jesus's ministry, it ought to be the model. It ought to be the model that we are following, first of all, for how we live our own lives, but also for how we lead ministry. I mean, you know, what a crazy thought that we would have done it any other way, right? And so really, it was a huge, just a huge defining moment for me when I realized that Jesus's life and ministry needed to become the model for everything that I do, and his mission needed to be our mission, and his method needed to be our method. And so really, we just kind of frame the entire process up by going back to the life of Christ. And whenever you study the life of Christ, it always helps you it always reveals to you how we need to be going about ministry. And so here's what happens when you look at the life of Christ. So it's really very clear that Jesus gave us a mission. That mission is to make disciples, but he didn't stop there, because he defines that and he says, don't just make disciples, make fully trained disciples. So, Scott, I grew up in a church where we were really good at making partially trained disciples, but not fully trained disciples. So a fully trained disciple, somebody who really has the character and the conduct of Christ and is able to share that and reproduce that in other people. So for us, when we go back and look at Jesus, so Jesus gave us this mission, make disciples that are fully trained. And then he gives us a methodology or a strategy that he literally used. I mean, he literally did this, 2,000 years ago. Now, context might be a little different and that kind of thing in terms of, how we do it. But the process has not changed in 2,000 years. And so what Jesus did is that Jesus invited people that were a part of the culture to come and investigate who he was. And, there's a key statement that Jesus made in John chapter 1. He said to a couple of John's disciples, he said, come and see, come and see. So he's inviting them to come and just check out what he has to offer and who he is and what he can do in their life. And then Jesus took them a second step, and he said, not just come and see, but come and follow me. And so in that second step, Jesus is literally inviting them into community, because they're going to travel with him. He's going to actually change locations. He's going to go from Bethany up to Galilee. So they're going to take a step beyond just checking it out. They're going to do life with him. And then the third step, he said, come and remain in me. And so now he's calling them to a life of obedience. And so, as you can see, all this is very strategic that Jesus is doing. And then after he had raised them up as disciples, then they were actually ready to become leaders. And so one of the things that we try to do is that we try to make disciples and then appoint fully trained disciples to be leaders. So you really have a process modeled by Christ himself of how to take untrained seekers and lead them to become fully trained disciples. And, Scott, the crazy thing is that so we ought to be sending out leaders into the harvest that are fully trained, not partially trained. And you can tell I get worked up over this, man. I'm pretty excited about it. And the thing about it is that this process is not super complicated. You just have to stay with it. You just have to work it. And Jesus didn't make it complicated for a reason, because he gave this process to unschooled ordinary men. And so really and truly, you don't have to be, an off the chart entrepreneurial leader to execute what Jesus told us to do 2,000 years ago. So that's kind of how we look at that.
I love it. I love your passion for that. When you talk about come and see, come and follow me and remain in me. I've been studying here of late, Ken, just in John 15 about that idea to abide or to remain. Mm-hmm. And I'm just more and more convinced that may be the most important word in the New Testament when it comes to making mature disciples, of just abiding in Christ. Man, love that word. Good word. Hey, let me mention another one to you, because you, in the blog, you share a statement that talks about the disciple making begins with evangelism. Now, for some people, that's going to be kind of a antithetical cross-cultural statement, because so many people see that disciple making and evangelism as two horses, right? Rather than two wings on the same airplane. And I love what you put in there about that. Can you maybe just help us understand a little bit about what you mean when you talk about disciple making begins with evangelism, and then you can't have genuine evangelism if you're not doing biblical discipleship?
Yeah. Good question. And so I would, again, man, here's what I would do. I would just take us back to Jesus, and I would take us back to what Jesus did. So Jesus started the greatest movement of disciples in history, and he started it by reaching lost people, people that were far from God. And so Jesus didn't start with the already convinced. Jesus started with untrained, unschooled seekers. And so, if we're going to let Jesus be our model, then evangelism, starts with reaching people that are far from God, raising them up, training them up, discipling them, and then sending them out to reach more of the harvest. I know you are familiar with this book, but one of the probably the classic book on on disciple making, discipleship, is Robert Coleman's book, The Master Plan of Evangelism. Well, isn't it ironic that the title of the classic book on disciple making is The Master Plan of Evangelism? And to me, I think it's beautiful that he calls a book on disciple making The Master Plan of Evangelism, because making disciples that make more disciples is the number one way to evangelize the planet. I mean, it is doing what Jesus told us to do. And so, if we're going to try to reach all nations through addition, we're in a world of hurt, man. We're not going to get there. We're not going to make disciples with movements of addition, which sadly is what, in fact, I wouldn't even dare say that our church is a movement yet of multiplication, but we do have disciples being multiplied. So I really think that if we don't get an idea that making disciples that multiply disciples, it literally is God's strategy for reaching the planet, we're going to keep spinning our wheels. We really are.
Yeah. And let me mention something here that you and I really hadn't talked about bringing up, but I think it's important, as I just keying off of something you just said, because we're making disciples. But there at Crossroads Church in Noonan, you guys are making disciples, but you also have an emphasis on multiplying campuses, multiplying churches, and that gives an exponential effect to the disciple making process, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And think about this. If you go back to Acts 1:8, right? So Jesus, he says, "You'll be my witnesses," starting in Jerusalem, but then you go to Judea and Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. So literally, what happened in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, is that they started the church in Jerusalem, but then churches are planted. Even Paul is planting churches all over the Mediterranean region. All of those churches are following the same model as the church in Jerusalem, and they are disciple-making churches. And again, if we're serious about reaching the planet, we've got to figure out how to multiply disciples. We cannot just do growth by addition. It's just not. We can't even keep up with the population growth of the world if we're just doing it by addition. We've got to do better than that. And so we got to figure out how to multiply disciples and multiply churches that are disciple making churches.
I love it. And I would even echo what Craig Etheridge, I believe a personal friend of yours, in his book, Bold, I think was the name of it. We just finished reading through that. And he makes a statement that the fastest growing churches in America are multi-site, multi-campus churches, because they're making disciples and they're trying to reach it through an exponential effect, not just by addition. So, man, I love that concept. So let's close our time out here, Ken. And I want to mention, just give you an opportunity, because, Impact Discipleship Ministries is really more than what you're just doing in your church, because you offer half-day trainings for churches to come on and learn how to become a disciple-making church. And you've even got an incredible conference that you and I will be speaking at in January. I'd love for you to mention that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, thanks for letting me share that. We've as our ministry has developed and it's grown over the years. There's a couple things we do. We feel like are really can really help churches. One, we have developed some disciple making resources, and so we do have some curriculum that very user friendly, very easy to kind of just plug and play in a church that wants to get started on disciple making. And so we, person can go to our website, check out a lot of really proven disciple making resources. And not obviously the key to those resources is just to get you to the Word of God, right? And so so that's what we've developed those for. And then we do have a couple of training opportunities. One that we're really excited about is called the Disciple Making Church Seminar. And so what we do is that we go to we'll go into a local church and we'll kind of walk them through really the ingredients that Jesus had in order to get disciple making started in the first church, in his church. And so we have a seminar that walks through those four things, and we can actually even come into a community and pull together several churches. We've done this through some associations, some local associations. So it can be a single church, or it can be several churches joined together. We just did this in Flint River Baptist Association recently, and so it works both ways. And then another thing that we do, Scott, is that we have an online equipping group for pastors, and we call it the making of a disciple making pastor. And so if we realize that if a church is going to be a disciple making church, it's probably going to have to start with the pastor. And so our seminaries do a great job of giving us theology and pastoral care and preaching, but they sometimes fall a little short on teaching a pastor how to be a disciple making pastor. So we have a sort of a 6-week online equipping group that we just gotten it started, but it's a great opportunity. And then the conference that you were talking about is going to be in January, and we're calling it the Disciple Making Summit. And it's been burning in us for a long time, and this may be not the best time in history to try to pull off a conference, but we're going to go for it. So last weekend, I believe it's like 29th and 30th of January, we're going to do a Friday night, Saturday morning conference here at Crossroads in Newnan called the Disciple Making Summit. You're going to be doing one of those breakouts. A guy named Robert Mullins and Craig Etheridge and myself, we'll be doing the breakouts. And then a guy named Bob Dukes, who is with Worldwide Discipleship Association, and a guy named Barry St. Clair, who is with Reach Out Ministries, are going to be our keynote speakers. And so we're actually going to do our Disciple Making Church seminar on Friday morning leading into that. So we're really pumped about it. We think it's going to be a big weekend. It's for people in our church, but it's also for anybody that's within that can travel and get here. So so you can go to our website, impactdisciples.com, to find out more about that. And we can put links in here for our website. But yeah, it's good. So we really are committed to trying to come alongside pastors and churches and leaders, try to help them just figure out how do you implement. I mean, we've been doing it for 31 years. And so we're just willing to pretty much share everything that we've been learning and are still learning, Scott, to be honest with you.
Love it. Love it. And I'm looking forward to it. Matter of fact, I'll be sharing the greatest church health principle that I've ever learned. That's what I'm going to be speaking on in my breakout there, Ken. So excited about that. Well, friends, thank you for viewing today. And Ken Adams, pastor at Crossroads Church in Newnan and founder, director of Impact Ministries. Thank you for joining us. And I want to say a thank you to Mike Taylor as well. Mike is our West Central discipleship consultant, and he is our show producer today. So Mike, thank you for running the ship and setting this up for us. And last reminder, if you haven't put your name or where you're viewing from, please make sure that you drop that in the comments. And we're interacting. Our whole team is interacting throughout this entire broadcast. So if you've got questions, we'd love to answer those. And we will also make sure that Ken Adams Impact Ministries, that those resources are in the chats for you as well. So thanks again. And as we always like to close our broadcast, my encouragement to you is to make sure that you reinvest the gospel seed that was shared with you.